I have 21 years invested with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. That's kind of what pushed me into what I'm doing now, because 21 Memorial Weekends and seeing the families and the tears and the kids and the widows, and it's terrible, devastating. So you kind of want to get on the other side of this. You want to get ahead of it and say, well, how can we prevent this from happening? So that's kind of what motivates me to be the safety advocate that I am.
Enchanted Sky Media.
From the Enchanted Sky Studios in Prescott, Arizona, this is Code 3, the Firefighters Podcast, hosted by award-winning journalist Scott Orr. Code 3 features interviews with leading members of the fire service, discussing firefighting strategies, tactics, and other topics you need to know more about. Now, here's Scott.
That's right, and I will not let Parkinson stop me. Thank you for joining me again here on Code 3. This is the show for and about firefighters. We're informing and entertaining members of the fire service, just like you, from coast to coast. How safe are you as a firefighter? Be honest now. Do you don all your gear before you make entry, or do you take a risk thinking you may save someone? Or what about something as simple as wearing your seatbelt on the way? Now look, I know there's a certain faction of firefighters who long for the days of riding the tailboard. These are the guys who say it's possible to be too safe. But if you want to make sure you go home tonight and have a longer career, safety is the one key element. That's why my guest today wrote a comprehensive book on how to be safe. It's titled Fire Officer's Guide to Occupational Safety and Health, and it's written by Chief Ronald Kanterman of the Wilton, New York Fire Department. Ron has 40 years of service, having been both a volunteer and career firefighter. He's worked at the FDNY as well as a Fortune 500 company's Emergency Services Division. Ron's written books and written dozens of articles, and he's been on staff at FDIC. And Ron Kanterman joins me now. Welcome to Code 3.
Good to be here, Scott. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you, sir. So what prompted you to write this book?
The basic thought process behind it was that I've been writing articles here and there on health and safety. I had the Occupational Health and Safety chapter in the last version of the last edition of the Fire Chief's Handbook for Penwell Fire Engineering. And I started looking around and all the stuff going on, and I said to myself, there's a lot of stuff on health and safety, and it's all over the place. It's everywhere. There's a chapter in this book, a chapter in that book. There's an article over there. Somebody wrote something like this over here, and I thought it might be just a good thing to bring it all together. So I took all my writings, which was about 2/3 of the book, almost 3/4 of the book, the articles I'd done, the chapters I'd done, the things I had done for the National Fallen Firefighters on the 16 Life Safety Initiatives, Everyone Goes Home program, pulled that all together, and then started to do more research and pulled stuff in on cancers, fitness, wellness, and the fire ground and emergency operations, like working on roadways and highways, blocking traffic, structural operations, and I dug into the fire service brain trust and pulled out as much as I could to try to get it all in one spot. And that was really the goal behind the book, was to make it a one-stop shop for a health and safety officer, a company officer, a chief, or the designee who'd be kind of looking into this stuff.
So then would you call this more a reference book or a guide for people who are newer at their positions?
It's both. It's actually both, because what it'll do as a desktop reference, which I like to call it, because it kind of is. It's really not a book you could just sit down and kind of read through, and it's a reference book. The discussions take place in the firehouses around the country about whether it's wellness, fitness, cancers, whatever, they could say, well, let's pull this book off the shelf and see if Kanterman put something in there on it. The other neat advantage to the book is I've included over 20 sample SOPs regarding health and safety. So that's a task that no one loves to do in the fire service. So I'm hopefully helping to springboard the writing of SOPs around the country for health and safety, along with a risk management plan that meets the intent of NFPA 1500. I've interpreted 29 NFPA standards. The byline and the mantra that Penwell Fire Engineering is going to use to market this book is Chief Kanterman has done the work for you.
I like that. Yeah,
I didn't mind doing it. It's okay.
Yeah, I like that. I saw that you had the example SOPs in there, and I thought, wow, this is actually something that you could pick up and go, well, here's where I start my program.
Yeah, and that's the idea. It's just, it doesn't mean these SOPs, these samples, they're not perfect. Nothing is in this world, but it's a springboard. It's a place to get started. I just pictured the committee sitting around the firehouse saying, we really need an SOP for confined space entry. It's one of the most dangerous things we're going to do. How the heck do we get started? So wait a minute. I think Kanterman did that for me. And on and on and on. And like I said, there's over 20 of them in there. So it was just a springboard, a starting place for the fire service to get started. And going back to your question, it's a guide for a person just jumping in. It's the perfect book for an officer, a lieutenant captain, battalion chief, who gets called into the chief's office in a medium to large fire department and says, you are appointed as my health and safety officer for our fire department. Perfect book for that guy. Or if the department's not big enough to have a separate guy and the operations deputy is the health and safety officer, which is like that in most cases, this is a perfect book for that guy. It's a step saver. It's a little bit of a time saver. It's got just enough information in there to get started. It's not going to make anybody an expert by any means, and I'm certainly not an expert. But what it will do is it'll offer them a tool. The thinking is it's a pretty good tool for the toolbox.
What is the state of safety in fire departments? Would you say that they're mostly on the way there? They're there. They have a ways to go.
I think we're past on the way. I think because that firefighter safety has started to take root about 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, really started. We're kind of talking about everybody's been tiptoeing around it, and then you had the old school thinking about, well, it's not what we signed up for. We're going to throw ourselves in a hand grenade. Well, that thinking has shifted. There's a little bit of a paradigm shift. The National Fallen Firefighters, they launched their program 15 years ago, the Courage to be Safe. Everyone goes home with the 16 initiatives. The IF, FDIC has their initiatives. And so the thinking has shifted. I mean, I know there's hundreds, if not thousands, of fire schools and fire academies around the country where when their brand new firefighters go through Firefighter 1 or Firefighter 1 and 2 or recruit school or probie school or whatever they call it, they do a 4-hour block on the life safety initiatives and on the Courage to be Safe. And so they actually threw that entire block into the curriculum. So it's kind of giving the new recruits, the new people, some religion, so to speak, safety religion, before they hit the street and head back to the firehouse. So I think we're well on our way. I think we're getting there. What I heard as I taught that program around a 4-state area, and then travel a little bit as well over the years for the foundation. What I kind of heard, which was encouraging, was the old timers and the veterans of the firehouse would lean over to the young kids and say, "Hey, listen to this guy. We didn't get this. Nobody gave us this lecture when we got hired 20 and 30 years ago, etc." So it seemed that the senior firefighters in the house were kind of enamored with the fact that there's actually a program out there that sounds like that everybody cares about us too. We're included in the life safety factor on the fire ground, and I think it's always been that way, but no one ever talked about it, no one ever formalized it, because it would also that wouldn't have fit in with the past thinking and the past bravado of being the macho firefighter, and I'm indestructible and all that other stuff. So I think we're well on our way. I think we're past on our way. I think we're not there yet, but we're getting there. I really believe we're getting there. If you look at line of duty deaths year after year, we've had some good years in the last 10. We had 1 or 2 years we're down into the 70s, and that's not for me. That's not a great year. I have 21 years invested with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I've been working for them for 21 years, and that's kind of what pushed me into what I'm doing now. Because 21 Memorial weekends and seeing the families and the tears and the kids and the widows, and it's terrible. It's devastating. So you kind of want to get on the other side of this. You want to get ahead of it and say, well, how can we prevent this from happening? So that's kind of what motivates me to be the safety advocate that I am. But I think that the country has turned the corner. That the fire service throughout the country has certainly turned the corner, and is looking at health and safety. And now, of course, the hot topic is cancers. You know, we have a cancer epidemic. I'm a cancer survivor myself, and I think our generation of firefighters, my generation, we're doing everything we can to make it better for the next generation. We're pulling out all the stops. We're looking at gear. We're looking at masks. We're looking at skin absorption and all the things that surround us on the fire. You know, deconning at the fire ground and all of that stuff. So the next generation of firefighters, you know, 20, 25 years from now, you know, they won't even be talking about cancer in the fire service.
Well, now it's obvious that safety is where the smart money is, but at the same time, you do mention the people who have the macho attitude, and so is it still common among, let's say, the older members of the fire service?
Mixed bag. You can't drop all the 25 and 30-year veterans into one pot. There is certain, but you know what? Interestingly enough, I'm coming across the new young fire officer today has taken it fairly seriously, and I recently met a 25 or 27-year-old new lieutenant, and he had a 30-year veteran driver, and the driver could have been his dad. They went out on their first run together, and that lieutenant jumped in the seat, buckled, turned around to the jump seat. The guys behind them were buckled. The 30-year driver was not. And he said, I'll just use the name Mike. I'm making it up. He said, Mike, don't move the rig. He said, why? He says, you got to put your seatbelt on, man. And they got into a discussion about that. And he said, and not a long discussion because they were going through an alarm. And he says, I'm going to ask you one more time. And he said, nah, don't wear a seatbelt, Lieutenant. I'm sorry. He said, shut the rig off. We're not going. And he called out of service. He called the dispatcher and said, send another engine. We can't get out. Knowing full well the chief was going to call and say, what's wrong with engine 7? And then this driver would have to explain himself. And he did. And that was the only time he had to explain himself. That was the only time. After that, the older guy learned to get into the rig, buckle up like everybody else, and keep going. You know, so it's a matter of having it. That's where that byline came from with that program, the courage to be safe. You know, having enough courage for the young lieutenant to tell the 30-year veteran, you need to buckle your belt, and having enough courage to be the only guy who's buckling his belt in the jump seat in the back, and everybody else isn't, and having the courage to do that. And eventually everybody will catch on. You know, I'm fortunate in my department here where I am now. The guys, they have a good safety culture. They want to go home, and no, they don't want to get sick. So they do whatever they have to and whatever they can to avoid those things and have a long career and then pension to follow, etc. So you know, but I think I don't want to ever put all the senior firefighters and veterans in that big basket and saying they're all anti-safety. They're not. I heard chiefs on fire grounds 20 and 30 years ago, you know, be careful. Or, you know what, let's get off the roof. Now's the time to get out or evacuate the building. I'm not happy here. So that safety was always on everybody's mind, but I think it was more on the mind of the bosses who were more worried about their men, and now men and women, than the men were worried about themselves. And to drive that point home, one of my colleagues here in Fairfield County, Connecticut, as a chief, he's told his guys when they talk about safety, cancer prevention, getting washed, and all that stuff, everything safety and health, he's told them time and time again, I can't want this more than you. And I put that quote in my book. It's in the first page. We, as chief officers and as leaders, we can't want this stuff more than the line guys. And I tell my guys that too. We start talking about let's start doing just a gross decon after a structure fire. Wash your gear off right there. Take a line, wash yourselves off, wash each other off. And it's proven in the lab. They said 85% effective if you do a quick wash with a little soap and water on your gear at the scene, rather than taking all that crap back to the firehouse and let alone in the cab. The whole idea to this is I think the turning point was to convince the entire line, to take stock in themselves and to believe that this is good for them, and it'll in the long run it'll pay off better for them. It's not just the chief barking an order or saying it's not just another rule. We made it so that the firefighters themselves can see the benefit of doing this stuff in leading a long and happy and healthy career.
Let's look at this from the other direction now. Have you experienced any situations where, say, a company officer has a philosophy more like do as I say, not as I do?
I haven't seen that here in my small career department, but I've heard it from other people. In Connecticut, the career fire chiefs, we have an organization, and we run a new officers course every January. We run a program for brand new appointed lieutenants and captains from around the state, and we usually have a class of about 25 to 30. And we tell them, what you guys say in here stays in here. You're all in uniform. You're all wearing your patches. We know who your bosses are, but we commit to that privacy of that room, and tell us what your problems are in your department, and we'll try to help you solve them, despite the boss sometimes. And we hear that occasionally. We got the deputy's out there, and he's telling us put on this and do that and do this, and he's standing out there in his underwear, so to speak, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt at the fire ground. So yeah, that's out there, and I think that's shifted as well. I think that has shifted as well. I think that we've put so much emphasis in the last 15 years on the company officer being a leader and showing leadership, and that do as I say, not as I do anymore doesn't hold. And you got to set the example, and you got to walk the talk, and all those great sayings that we can hang on a wall somewhere. But it's true, and it's true. My officers get out there, they're dressed, they're in their gear, they're ready to go. And I told them, I says, if you don't look like that, you can't turn around to your men and say, hey, like, where's your helmet, where's your gloves, where's your face shield? If you're not completely donned yourself. And me as a boss at the fire ground, I can't do it to the captains. I can't say, hey, what are you walking around with a half a gear on? We have a structure fire. I'm at the car, but I'm gearing up. So I think we've turned that corner as well, Scott. And I think that the officers and the senior members of the fire service around the country, I think they've made that commitment to say, yeah, I need to lead by example. And aside from what we're talking about, there's a whole leadership movement on. I mean, we've been talking about this at FDIC, for many, many years on a national level. And so now there's lots of books have been written on leadership, and there's a good half a dozen or 15 or 10 out there that are written by fire people. There's non-fire people who write great leadership books. But what we committed to do was to pound the leadership into the people who are in leadership positions. I teach a seminar on leadership excellence. I teach it around the country. I teach it locally. And what I'm finding still, after so many years of doing it, there's still audiences and there's still people and there's new officers all the time. And when we sit and talk to them, they kind of look at the concepts and say, well, yeah. And at the end of the day, what I do in my particular class is I say, listen, think about what you wanted to say about you at your retirement party or your funeral. And they kind of give me everybody. We go around the room, and everybody says something real nice about themselves. Oh, I want them to say I was the greatest fire officer ever. I was a great husband and a great father. I was a great leader. I cared, and they all say great things about themselves. And I look at them, Scott, and I say to them, now think really hard while you're driving home today. If it happened tomorrow, would they really say those things about you? And if not, then you got work to do. You got to make an adjustment in how you treat people and how you lead people and all that other stuff. So I think it's the leadership emphasis, particularly on the company officer, and the safety emphasis. I think they've gone hand in hand. I do another program called Safety Leadership, which is a combination of both. The safety stuff is the stuff we're talking about now, and it's all the stuff that's in the book. And I bring my leadership stuff in, and I kind of merge it and meld it together, so they can take, whoever's sitting in that room can take the lead when they get back to the firehouse and say, all right, we need some safety, health, wellness, fitness, etc. And here's what I learned today. So that's the hope. That's always the hope,
All right, we'll leave it there. Great new book, Ronald Kanterman. Thanks for joining me on Code 3 today.
Thank you. Be safe. We'll see you soon.
And we put some more information on Ron and how to get a hold of his book on our website, code3podcast.com/safety program. All one word, safety program. Check it out. All right, that's it. That's all for this edition of Code 3. This time we talked safety. And I want to know if you have any stories about safety-related situations you've encountered and how you dealt with them. Just email me, scott@code3podcast.com. I'll read letters in a future show. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next time with more, and I hope you'll join me. I'm Scott Orr, and until then, stay safe.
Code 3 is a production of Enchanted Sky Media. To contact us, get more information on today's topic, or subscribe to the podcast, go to code3podcast.com.